All right. Welcome, everybody, to the TransView pre-show. Today we have, at least for the pre-show, we have two very special guests with us today. First and foremost, we have Aneesh Sheth. Welcome, Aneesh. It's great to see you again. How's it going?
Good. How are you? I have missed being here. Oh.
Hey!
Yeah, I've missed being here, so I'm really glad to be back. I feel like it's been a while.
It's been a couple months, and we've certainly missed having you on the show, so super excited to have you back this month. Can't wait to get into the rest of the show today. Sorry, I had the YouTube page working on like a 10-second delay start playing in my ear, and I'm like, what? So, all right, that's muted. We're good now. And then our second fabulous guest, and this is a newcomer to the show today, so give a warm TransView welcome to Clair Farley. Claire, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
Yeah, well, we're really excited to have you. And so I think, and then there's also me, of course. So I'm Erin, also known as Grishno. If you're watching this and don't know who I am, then I don't know how you found this. But welcome to the TransView for our 5th episode. I can't even believe that we've been going for 5 months. That's incredible. So what I'd like to start doing for the show today is just sort of catch up with everyone and see how everyone's going. So Aneesh, I know it's been a couple months since you've been on the show, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
I've been busy. It's been a busy summer. Let's see. A month and a half ago, I shot some Microsoft commercials for Office 365.
Nice.
With Jones Advertising, and they're based out of Seattle here. Really great company. Lots of fun. Kind of 2 very long days on set, but it was nice. I'm also in the midst of shooting my first feature. In which I play a supporting character, and the working title of the movie is Force Play, and it's based off of a play by a local playwright. And the production studio is Honeytoad Studios, and they're so fun. And we get to shoot up on Bainbridge Island, and for those of you who don't know really the area, Bainbridge Island is an island that's kind of, you take like a 35-minute ferry from Seattle to get over there, and it's so beautiful. It's very small town feeling because it's all local mom and pop shops and things like that, and it's really great. They've got a Bainbridge Performing Arts over there where they do a lot of theater over there as well. And lastly, I am producing and performing in a piece for the Fringe Festival in September, and so we started rehearsals for that a couple weeks ago. And so between the performing and the producing duties, it's been keeping me really, really busy. And it's going well, and I go on vacation next week for a week, and I'm actually really looking forward to it.
That's so exciting. Where are you going, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually going to Disneyland.
Disneyland?
Yeah, I'm going with my best friend from San Francisco and a couple of other friends of ours, and I'm need a vacation, so I'm excited. I haven't been to Disneyland in 10 years, so I'm excited. The little kid in me just is really, really excited.
So that's so exciting. A well-deserved vacation. It sounds like you've been super busy, really working hard.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's good to say that you're a working actor. Feels really nice.
Yeah. Not many people get to say that. So
yeah.
Congratulations. We're all rooting for you. We're all in your corner.
Thank you.
And Claire, so you've never actually been on the show, so you can sort of catch us up with a lot of things going way back.
How much time do you have? No.
Yeah, so we would love to hear about how's your summer been, and what's been going on in your life.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't had much of a summer, although work keeps me pretty busy.
Sorry, my dog.
Oh, lonely puppy. The work's been keeping you busy.
Yeah, work's been keeping me busy, but I'm also planning a vacation coming up, which I'm excited about. So I'll be taking a couple weeks off for the first time in, I think, a couple of years.
Oh my goodness. So also well-deserved vacation.
Yeah.
Where are you going to be going?
We're going to be going to Honolulu, where my mom lives, and then we'll be going to the Big Island and staying there for a week.
Oh, that's amazing. I love Hawaii so much. I went there one time. I stayed on Maui the entire time, and it was just fantastic. How long are you going for?
It'll be about 10 days, but it's kind of like a second home. You know, I've grown up going there my whole life, so.
Oh, that's so nice.
I have never been to Hawaii. I'm so jealous.
Oh, you have to do it one day.
Yeah, I hear it's so beautiful. I really want to go.
Well, it's just a quick hop across the pond for us on the West Coast. So, I mean, you would think that, but it's actually like a 5-6 hour flight.
It is. It is.
Far.
6 hours, but it's worth it.
Definitely is. And Claire, so for anyone who doesn't know, you've had sort of a pretty big presence in the trans community. And so you starred in the documentary, and a lot of people are probably familiar with this documentary, but it was Red Without Blue, correct?
Yep. Yeah, my first film was Red Without Blue, which was an independent film about my family and kind of my transition and moved to San Francisco. And then I also did a film with National Geographic, just about my marriage to my husband, Jim Howley. Which kind of covered his story, my story, and another person's story, and just kind of evolution after transition, and some of the stuff we don't usually get to hear in those stories. So it was fun to do kind of a part 2 of what is life like beyond transition.
That's great. And for anyone who doesn't know as well, I also got to make like a 2-second cameo in that National Geographic special. So me too. Me too.
Yeah, it's American Transgender, and you can find it on YouTube. And Erin's part I really like. It's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
My 2-second cameo. It was good. So that's how you know you've made it. You did a 2-second cameo with Claire Farley. So I'm super excited to have everyone on the show today. And we have a fantastic show coming up. We're going to be talking about a lot of really relevant things that have been going on. So there was the Hobby Lobby ruling that happened recently. How does that impact trans people in the workforce? And so we're sort of going to go in depth today on employment and employment issues. And so that's actually why we have Claire on right now. So Claire, you also work at the SF LGBT Center, right?
Yeah, so at the center, I'm the Associate Director of Economic Development, and I run all of our workforce programs, our small business programs, and our financial services programs. We make up about 1/3 of the programming at the center. And I'm also part of the initiative that helped start the first trans employment program that's funded by the city of San Francisco. And so I've worked with a lot of other cities to develop similar programs throughout the country.
That's great. And so you work with partners, different corporations and things like that, and you do a lot of job fairs, job placements, things like that. So you have a lot of experience working in the employment sector, specifically with trans people.
Yeah, I see kind of what we do as kind of implementation of policy. So we work a lot with just, our partners with Transgender Law Center and NCTE to really advocate for policy, and then we get to go in and train employers on what those policies are and help folks kind of know what their rights are.
It's fantastic. That's great work. So I don't know if anyone wants to hear about what I've been up to this summer.
Yeah.
Yes, tell us.
So I've had an absolutely fantastic summer. So school for me, I've been a full-time student for the last year, straight A's and everything, so that was very exciting. But this summer I wanted to sort of take it easy because I'm transferring to a new college in the fall. I'm going to Mills College. And so my taking it easy was I took a painting class this summer.
Nice.
And I'll grab a painting really quick to just show you. Here we are. All right. So this is a painting that I did for the class. It's my self-portrait. But the reason it's my self-portrait is it is a dust mite that is living on my body. So that is that was sort of my big I don't know, like, thing that I was doing, my big activity. And then the other thing that I've been working on is also getting my motorcycle license.
Oh, right. I heard about that.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know. My mom keeps calling it a murder cycle. So we know how she feels about me driving it, but I'm pretty excited. I passed the driving course and everything, so I have an appointment at the DMV next week to actually get my license. On Monday, I'm buying a bike, so I'm going to be riding around on a Ninja, is what it is. I don't know if you look it up, they're pretty cool. So I'm super excited. We're getting that so that I can drive to school and back and stuff like that, and not have to monopolize the car that we have to use for work and things like that. So it's been a really fantastic summer, very low key. But I also just got back from Boston, and I was there for a conference for the scholarship that I got from the Point Foundation. Mm-hmm. And the Point Foundation, for anyone who doesn't know, is an organization that supports LGBT students by providing scholarships. And this year they had over 5,000 people begin the application process, and they awarded 23 scholarships. So it's pretty, like, they really narrowed it down. So I'm really happy, really amazed that I was able to actually get this scholarship. And so every year they have a leadership conference, and they invite all of their scholars and alumni out to come and get together and socialize and work on leadership skills. So they had things like Elizabeth Warren taped a message for all the new scholars, and I had like a fangirl moment where I was like, "Oh, it's Elizabeth Warren! Oh my gosh!" Mm-hmm. So that was pretty amazing. But then Janet Mock was also there.
Wow, that's great.
That was really fun. I actually got to meet her finally.
You haven't met her?
Yeah. We've been in the same city so many times.
Oh my God! Next time she's in town, when we do our girls' night, we'll invite you.
That would be amazing.
Can I come?
Yes.
Can we please
I love
do
Janet.
That would be amazing. That would be possibly the best thing.
Hashtag girls' night Janet.
There you go. It was pretty amazing. So she did this sort of like a conversation with Janet Mock sort of format, and she had her books there and everything to talk about that and do a book signing. And at the end of the conversation, she did a Q&A. And so I got up and I asked a question about, we're sort of in this moment where trans people are very visible, on news, on, all sorts of media. It's, trans issues are sort of bubbling to the surface all over the place. So how do we keep that going forward? And she had a lot of really insightful comments on that, but unfortunately I didn't hear any of them because she began her response by saying, "Do I know you?" And I was like, "I don't think we've ever met, but maybe online." She's like, "Are you Grishno?" I was like, "Oh my God, yes." I had this moment where like one of my personal heroes knew who I was before actually meeting in person, and that sort of blew my mind and was like, wow, like, okay, I have arrived. So that was pretty exciting. But yes, let's do girls' night with Janet. That would be awesome. I would love.
I'm eating with jealousy over here.
Well, you'll have to come and visit.
Oh, definitely.
That'll be a lot of fun. All right, so we're about ready to wrap up the pre-show. But before we do that, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just ask the audience a couple of questions, and then they'll have a chance throughout the next hour to respond to these questions. And at the end of our actual show, we'll feature some of the best responses. So the one question I always love to ask, because I'm always surprised by the answer, is where are you watching this from? And the reason I like to ask is people are coming to this show from all over the world, and I'm always surprised So I want to know where people are watching us from, and maybe how you heard about us. Um, so I guess maybe we can go to Aneesh, putting you on the spot. Do you have a question for any of our viewers today?
I don't. Especially because you put me on the spot.
I
Now.
know I did put you on the spot, didn't I? Well, we can come back to you.
Yeah,
We
but
have like
yeah.
another 3 minutes. Claire, I'm going to put you on the spot now. Do you have
Yeah.
anything that you'd love to hear from our viewers today?
Yeah, I would love to hear what folks' dream jobs are, since we're going to be talking a little bit about employment today.
That's a great one. All right, so we have where are you watching us from? What is your dream job? And
Still haven't come up with a question.
oh man. All right, so those are the 2 questions that we have today. But if you have, tell you what, if you have questions for Aneesh, send them to us right now, and at Aneesh or Ashmeth. Man, that's hard to pronounce. Hashtag the transview, and then you can also, we'll put mine up here, right here as well. Grishno at the transview. And Aneesh, I hadn't had a chance to actually thank you for in person. I did, I've used this for like the last 2 shows, and I've been like, oh, that's so amazing, but I haven't got a chance to say thank you for making these. Claire was saying that she wants one.
Okay, we will definitely send you one, Claire.
Yeah, I think the viewers would
Regular
want...
on the show now.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to go ahead and leave the pre-show for now. We're going to be back in about 7 minutes at noon Pacific time, but we'll see you then. And in the meantime, you can send your answers to those 2 questions on Twitter by using the hashtag #TheTransView. You can also send them at me or Aneesh, or also Claire, and Claire is at Claire Joy Farley on Twitter. Or you can also comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube, and we'll be able to get those comments as well. So we hope to see you in about 5 minutes. Bye, guys. Hey, Kortney, we're going to start as soon as Aneesh gets in.
Right on. Good morning.
All right, looks like everyone's on. All right. You guys ready? Let's do it. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Trans View. We are so excited to be here. Oh my goodness, we have the biggest panel that we've ever had on the show, so we're super excited. For those of you who don't know, my name is Erin Armstrong, also known as Grishno, but then again, if you don't know who I am and you're watching the show, then I don't know how you got here. So our first person that we'll go to today is Mr. Kortney Ryan Zeigler. Kortney, how are you doing? It's great to have you on the show.
Good, I'm doing good. I'm excited for our conversations today. And also, the lovely Joe is with me. So,
Oh, so exciting. Now I miss my kitty cam.
good morning, Claire, and good morning, Aneesh. Or
Good morning. Hi, Kortney.
And so our next panelist, familiar to anyone who's been watching for several of the first episodes, is the fabulous Aneesh Sheth. Aneesh, how are you doing today?
Good, I'm great, and I'm excited to see Kortney. I haven't seen him since, God, it's been a couple of years, huh, Kortney?
It has been a couple of years.
It's been a couple of years. I can't believe time has flown by so quickly, but it's so nice to finally get to do this with you. So, yeah, no, I'm excited to be here.
That's fantastic. I've been trying to get you two together on the show
I know,
for
and
like
finally
3
did
months.
it. Yeah.
So we finally made it. And then our last panelist. Oh, yep. Check out the mugs. We gotta get one to Kortney and
We gotta
Claire.
get for Kortney.
But our last panelist, last but not least, of course, is the fabulous, the wonderful Claire Farley, coming to us for the very first time. Welcome to the show, Claire.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have everyone on today. Man, so we have a jam-packed show today. It is very exciting. But, so why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it. But for those of you who weren't here during the pre-show, we had a couple of questions that we posed to the audience. And the first question was, where are you from? Where are you watching us from? And then the second question, which was from Claire Farley, was, what is your dream job? And I just want to point out that we've already had a couple of responses to this. Robin Gee says that they're watching from Sacramento, California, in their office currently, and that their dream job would be to own their own business, a dress shop or a coffee shop. So that's pretty exciting. And again, if you want to get involved with the show, all you need to do is either go to the YouTube page, you can comment down below, and we'll be able to interact with you directly there. Or you can go on Twitter using the hashtag #TheTransView, which, as you can see right there, hashtag #TheTransView. You can tweet at Grishno. And so thanks, Aneesh, for the fantastic mug with our hashtag on it. So why don't we jump right into it? It has been a busy month for trans issues. So the first thing that I'd like to mention today is that there has been a fashion model who has come out as transgender, and we'll put a photo of her up on the screen right now. So her name is Andrea Pajek, and I am probably butchering that name super hard, but she is famous. This is her fall fashion cover on the New York Magazine, and she's famous for being an androgynous model. And so she recently came out as trans. And what she says is, as a transgender woman, I hope to show that after transition, a life-saving process, one can be happy and successful in their new chapter. And I thought that that was a really powerful message. In addition to her coming out, she also said that she's no longer going to be modeling male fashions. Before, she's sort of been going back and forth. And now she's going to be exclusively modeling women's fashions. And so this is the second major supermodel that I know of, because there's also Carmen Carrera, who has come out as transgender. And so I'd love to see, like, what do you guys think about this? Is it, I mean, what do you think? I think it's pretty cool. But I'd love to hear what you guys think, if anyone has any thoughts.
I love her. I am rooting so much for her, and I hope she gets tons of success. Her story just really resonated with me. She's so brave. I mean, she's great. I really hope that she finds lots of
Thank you. One thing that she did say about her transition, and I'd love to hear what you think about this quote, Kortney. She says, "To all trans youth out there, I would like to say, respect yourself and be proud of who you are. All human beings deserve equal treatment, no matter their gender identity or sexuality. To be perceived as what you say you are is a basic human right." So do you guys think that being perceived as who you say you are is a basic human right?
Of course. Of course. I think that's one of the most basic rights of being a human being. Not everybody's going to respect that, and that's unfortunate. But it's always exciting and important to see figures with any type of platform and notoriety becoming advocates, right? I think that in this moment, if you're out in trans in any kind of public space, you in some ways are obligated to be an advocate and speak for our community. So for that, I'm super excited, and of course I love fashion, so I'm always excited to see more trans people in fashion. So that's what's up.
Very exciting. Claire, I'd love to hear what you think. Are you familiar with her or any of her work, or what do you think about her coming out?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been following her work for a long time. I know Kortney's huge into fashion, always looks fabulous, but I love fashion too. And, I think her work has been just, really kind of interesting and fun. And so I think that since she already has this kind of big following and she's already been in so much print media and lots of different fashion campaigns, I do think that, she's not famous because she's trans, but she's already an established model. And so I think that that's something that's super exciting and a little bit different than some of the other, kind of notoriety things that have been happening lately.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
That's great. Yeah, I think I think it's amazing to see when people are able to establish themselves in a career and then come out as trans or show who they are and receive support and be able to continue doing what they're doing, because for so long that wasn't necessarily the case. So I look forward to a really amazing, long, and fruitful career for her, and can't wait to see where she goes next. So our next piece of news is that there was a new study released from the Fenway Institute out of Massachusetts. It's a study called Project Voice, and it's about sharing community experiences. And so I'm putting some of the results that they have up on the screen right now. But some of the things that they found were that over 65% of respondents reported discrimination in one or more public accommodation settings in the past 12 months, and this is of transgender individuals specifically. So the report also finds that discrimination in public accommodations actually has a negative impact on an individual's health, stating that those who have faced discrimination during the past year were at an 84% increased risk of adverse physical symptoms and 99% more likely to have endured emotional symptoms during the past month compared to those who did not report discrimination. And so you can see some of this here. You can also find this at fenwayfocus.org. Again, it's called Project Voice. So this report, I love seeing reports like this because it finally, puts some numbers to things that we know are already going on. But to me, it's one of those like duh moments where you're like, oh yeah, of course, like duh. I guess maybe let's go to Claire. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this report. And do you think that being discriminated against in a public place or in public accommodation settings can have an impact on other things besides just your health?
Yeah, I think that public accommodation discrimination, employment discrimination, any level of discrimination, whether you're trans or if we look at racial justice issues, we see data, historically that impacts people's health. And I know that, I took a class probably 10 years ago that looked at the data of the impact of racism on the health, and at the time that data was new, and so it's kind of interesting that 10 years later we're now looking at data of discrimination even more broadly. But I think that public accommodations is interesting because that's kind of where we spend a good portion of our lives, whether it's in the coffee shop or retail or walking down the street. And so those are kind of those unmonitored moments. And so I think it's really exciting to kind of see some data around that. And then also just quickly, with public accommodations, especially around housing, we see tons of trans people in San Francisco and beyond discriminated in the shelter system, rental units, trying to purchase a home. And so those are like real issues, and this data can hopefully help us really start getting funding and develop programs to address those challenges.
Yeah, well said. When it talks about public accommodations, and Kortney, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. It says that the 5 most prevalent discrimination settings were transportation, retail, restaurants, public gatherings, and healthcare facilities. Do you think that this list is accurate? Do you think that there are other places that should be on this list? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's I've experienced discrimination in all of those, so I think that's that came true. Of course, there's a number of places, I guess maybe not considered public, like religious institutions or even private universities and things like that. But yeah, to echo what Claire's saying, I think it's and what you're saying, it's like this duh moment. Duh, we know this. Why are there research, funded research studies that are just telling us what we already know, what we live, what we talk about in our daily experiences with our friends or loved ones? But there's something about raising money, making other people who don't have these experiences believe in it, right? It's like we can talk all day, but some people are like, where are the numbers? Or we won't fund you. So there's this kind of like, yeah, why? But okay, but you have to appeal to this voice of gatekeepers, right? But yeah, I think even with that, such research is very useful, and not just because of funding, but because it allows other people to understand some sort of experience they don't have to live, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It does help translate some of the experiences that we know because we live these experiences every day, and puts them in a context that other people can understand. And Aneesh, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this last part. What they reported is that 28% of respondents reported that they had not seen a doctor in the last year. So that to me was staggering. But in addition, 29% reported having to teach their healthcare provider about transgender health issues within the past year. And so I'm curious, what sort of impact do you think that has on people when they're not accessing a doctor, and then when they are, over a third of them are having to actually teach their doctor about trans issues?
I think it takes a really big toll on their mental health having to do that. I think there's a lot of anxiety. I've had to deal with this too, and I'm sure we have all had at some point had to deal with some sort of thing like this. And I think, you know, it creates a lot of anxiety around having to, think about going to see a doctor who may not understand who you are and how you need to be treated. Then having to go in there and hoping that they're not going to be a total jerk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they come in and them admitting to not knowing anything about trans healthcare, then having to educate them kind of makes you feel like, well, why did I even bother coming to see you, you know? And I think that kind of creates maybe this cycle for people where they're like, well, what's the point of me going? Nobody understands me anyway, so I'm just not going to seek care, which is horrible, you know? And I really hope that people don't get caught in that cycle, and no matter how difficult it is, to know that you have to go in and maybe possibly teach your provider about trans healthcare, that they do it, because it's not just going to help you, it's going to help the people that are following in your footsteps.
Yeah, yeah, great point about, you know, we need to pay this forward, because if you can educate your doctor, then the next person who comes in, they're coming in at a whole different level, and I think that's very important.
And I think it's almost easier to I mean, the toll is obviously a lot greater, but I think in some aspect it's easier to say, well, no, I'm not going to deal with this and just kind of step away, versus kind of face the problem and say, no, I've got to deal with this head on, no matter what kind of adversity I face. I have to deal with this because it's going to help me and my community in the long run.
Yeah.
I think that's really important for people to get.
Yeah, I think that is very important. For me, so I've shared some experiences on my videos and things like that. But when I was initially transitioning in Utah, I went to a doctor and I tried to access hormone replacement therapy, and they just had no idea what was going on. And they basically just refused. They were like, this isn't going to happen. And so what that did is it forced me out of sort of the medical sphere and forced me into a place where if I wanted to access hormone replacement therapy, which I viewed as essential to my transition, I needed to find a way to access that illegally. And so I ended up going online, like so many people do, buying all my hormones that way. But the thing is, I didn't know a lot of things. Like, I was sort of flying blind here, so I didn't know I needed to block my testosterone at the time. So I was just taking tons of estrogen without blocking any testosterone, and at the same time I was also smoking cigarettes. So it's no surprise that I ended up at the age of 20, the ripe old age of 20, I ended up in the hospital with shooting pains from my heart to my shoulder. And I went to the hospital and I explained, like, these are really bad, I don't know what's going on, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. And they said, well, are you taking any medications? And I said, I'm taking estrogen. And they said, do you smoke? And I said, yes, I smoke. And they're like, have a seat. And like 45 minutes later, the pain had gone. So I was like, I'm out of here. I'm done. But, you know, like, that was a direct result of doctors not knowing how to work with me and forcing me into this sort of space. So I always advocate, see a doctor, because they can monitor your blood hormone levels. They can do all these different things that are really important to keeping you healthy. But if you can go and you can actually teach your doctor about how to do it, there's so much information out there. Doctors shouldn't have any excuse. So I think it's a really important thing. Kortney, I love your face. You look like you're just horrified right now. So you know, I think that that's a really important issue to bring up. Before we spend, go ahead. Sorry.
I would add too that one thing that now that there's more health coverage, you know, in San Francisco and beyond, people are covering transition-related care and surgical benefits. One thing that we're forgetting about is that people are not accessing aftercare. So a lot of people, you know, when you say train your provider or provide education to your provider, you know, there's a lot more detail in terms of what kind of medical knowledge those providers need. So I think that we have to kind of, you know, even though we're having healthcare, we have to make sure that the education is matching that, because, you know, if someone goes and has SRS, you know, and then they go to a doctor that can't treat them, then they just kind of are either, you know, shit out of luck or have to, like, somehow afford to go somewhere, like, across state to get help. And so I'm seeing this with, like, 12 or 15 different people that, really have no access to aftercare, and it's, the doctors take the money and then they don't want to do anything after that.
Yeah,
That's a great
important.
point. That's a really great point to bring up. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, a lot of people, I don't think we even have those discussions. Like, yeah, we can have this access to healthcare, but once you have something, whatever that may be, then how do you take care of yourself post, right? What happens after? What happens in the long term? How do we educate people to take care of us in the long term? We don't really, in some ways, know how to take care of ourselves yet, right? So I think that thank you for bringing that point up.
Yeah, it's a great point, and not one that a lot of people think about. So I think that's really important to bring up. Before we spend the entire show talking about healthcare, because I know that we all could, we're gonna move on to our next piece of news today, and this is a little bit sadder news. So unfortunately, this news comes out of Baltimore again, and people who watched last month's show will say, "Well, you talked about some sad news out of Baltimore last month when a trans woman there was murdered." Well, it's happened again, and this is the second unresolved killing of a transgender woman in the past month in Philadelphia. So if you're in Philadelphia, please be careful. I know the community there is on high alert. The victim went by the name Mia Henderson, and something of note about this was that she is a relative of the Clippers player Reggie Bullock. So she's the stepbrother or half brother. I'm not entirely sure of their relationship, but related to a famous NBA player. And so I know when I saw this, I was, I hate seeing news like this, and every time it just devastates me. But I hope that if one good thing comes out of this, it's that we can increase the awareness. We can use this connection to increase awareness of violence against transgender women, especially transgender women of color. I have a quote here from Monica Yorkman, who is a leader in the Baltimore lesbian and gay, bisexual, transgender community. And she says, "I'm sure our community is being targeted. That's not even new." And for anyone who's in the community, I know that they share that same sentiment. This isn't new, this isn't a new issue, but it is one that I think needs to be talked about more. So does anyone have any thoughts about this killing or about violence that has been going on against our community?
It's not new. She's right, it's not new. And it's sad that something like this has to kind of make everyone aware of it, that this goes on. But
yeah, it's sad. I hate having to bring up and report things like this, because like every year we have Transgender Day of Remembrance, and we get together and we read that list. And I've been doing that for 10 years now. This year is going to be my 10th year doing that, and every year it's the same thing, and it I would keep wondering when are we going to get past this? When is it going to get better? I hope soon, but I don't know. On a more positive note, though, we do have an additional piece of news, and this one I actually heard about very recently. So there was a transgender veteran who is 93 years old. So she served, I believe it was in World War II, as a fighter pilot, and came out much later in life. And so she had a major victory against the Social Security Administration here in the United States. So all of her legal documents going into this said female. Her pilot's license, her driver's license, her birth certificate, all of these things said female. She was married to a man, and they'd been together for 38 years, married for 11, and he passed away in 2013. And what happened was the Social Security Administration, when she filed for survivor benefits, denied her claim. And they said, you are not entitled to your husband's survivor benefits because you were a man, and he was a man, and so that wasn't a legal marriage. But at the same time, all of her government identification shows that she's a woman. And so this sort of thing has been happening all the time. And so what happened is this was able to be challenged in court, and she won a major victory. And what the results are of this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Claire. So basically, the impact of this is that moving forward, cases like this will no longer automatically be subject for review. So basically what was happening is anytime a transgender person submitted a claim to Social Security, it was put through an automatic review. So we were being targeted specifically for additional scrutiny and then denied care. And so that automatic review is no longer in place. And that, I think, is going to have a big impact. But Claire, I'd love to hear, do you think that that is the right move? And do you think that this will have an appropriate impact going forward?
Yeah, you know, I think it is the right move, because if you think of all of the other pieces that get in our way, you know, just the process to get ID documentation, folks who are trying to reach asylum, like these pieces, there's so many steps that if you go ahead and then add on another component, you know, with Social Security, it's like folks are at the end of their life, they're looking to get benefits. You know, this person is an elder, you know, regardless of whether or not she was out in the community or not. You know, we need to make sure that everyone in our community is protected and has benefits. So, you know, I think that this is something that's a good step forward. I think we have to kind of think of what's going to be the policy underneath it, you know, how are we going to implement it? And so I'm not really sure where we're going to go with it, but I think this is a good step forward.
Yeah. And Kortney, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around this. So our elders within the community are often a very invisible presence. So not a lot of people are talking about or thinking about issues that are affecting trans elders, whether that's nursing homes and people having to detransition in order to live successfully in a nursing home, or things like Social Security benefits. So what do you think we can do to help raise some of these issues and make sure that they're being addressed?
Well, the obvious, I guess, all of us have an obligation to talk more about it, and also focusing on fostering intergenerational events, right? I think that's one thing that we don't necessarily do. Have different trans people, not only just across races, but across age backgrounds in the same space, where there's yearly events, perhaps like a pride or something. But beyond that, I don't really see interactions between different communities. So I think that's another step that needs to happen. And there's a lot of probably anxiety surrounding that, and I think a lot of misunderstandings from all sides, right, about a lot of things. So. Mm-hmm. But definitely, I think elders and aging and also very important, like having to transition taken care of in your older age. Like that's something that many of us are unaware of.
Yeah, yeah. And this is an issue, Aneesh, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. So this is an issue that it's inevitably going to impact us all, right? So, I may not be needing to access Social Security benefits at the moment, and I may not be looking at nursing homes or things like that for my partner, but at some point in my life, I'm going to have to do this. And so, this is really an issue that affects us all. So what are your thoughts around, sort of taking things this way by challenging it legally, and about what Kortney was saying about fostering more intergenerational conversations and things like that?
I think fostering intergenerational conversations is a big thing that we don't focus on. I don't know necessarily particularly in the LGBT community as a whole, but I've definitely seen it with my gay peers. It's very ageist, and I see that a little bit less with the trans community, but it still does happen. And I think that once we start kind of getting everyone together and saying, no, these are the problems that we all face. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or you're 80. I think the younger generation is a little more self-absorbed, and so I think that oftentimes, if it doesn't directly affect them, they're not going to help out in any way. And I think we need to find a way to bring in people who, and it's not just exclusive to younger people, although it happens a lot more with the younger generation. I think somehow make everyone, aware of the fact that this is only going to get better if we all help each other out and we all come together as a group. And I think one thing that really stuck out in the People article on people.com about her was she said, for the federal government to say you are not legally female was just so insulting at the time when she was already grieving the loss of her husband. And that really stuck out to me, and it's exactly what, are we that much of an inhumane society that we're going to tell someone who just lost their partner, their husband, their wife, that, oh, well, it doesn't matter that you lost somebody. We don't agree with who you are or, your documentation, so we're not going to provide you with the benefits that you're entitled for. It is really insulting. It's offensive, and it just shows us, how inhumane this system can be to anybody. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be trans or anything to experience something like this, even though it happens obviously with trans people. So
yeah. And part of what you're saying here really resonates as well with me. So there was in the same article, and that's also where I read this news, it reminded me a lot about the Doma case, where there was a woman who had been married to her partner, another woman, and her partner died, and they ended up in transferring the estate and things like that, had to pay all these different taxes because they weren't considered legally married by the federal government. And it's the same sort of situation where the system only responds when there's something like this that comes up, whether it's the offense of saying you're not a woman, you can't be married, and we're going to deny your benefits, or saying that you can't be married to this woman and we're going to deny you these benefits. So only when there has been harm done is there basis for a legal challenge, which can then change the system. And I really wish that there was some way of responding more proactively to these sorts of things and identifying them before they start impacting people. So that really resonated with me as well. Any final thoughts on Social Security or our elders or anything like that? Oh, we lost Kortney. Hopefully he comes back in a moment.
Well, I would just add, in terms of kind of addressing these problems before they happen, one thing that I'm hosting in October on the 21st is a town hall discussion on kind of the impact of economic justice or social justice on the community, and what are those things that we want to kind of bring forward. So I think that's going to be a great moment to have a dialogue, around some of these things that are really impacting people, so that kind of our experience is what's kind of moving policy forward versus kind of a reaction to, all of these negative events. And so I'm excited to see how we can really look at what the community's experience is around these issues of benefits and employment and housing, with all the eviction rates going up in San Francisco and the Bay Area. It's just a really important time to think about how do we do some more work retroactively.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then for those of us who would like to go to the town hall meeting, it's going to be in San Francisco. You said October 21st. Where can we find more information about that?
You can find more information on the sfcenter.org website or lgbtqweek.com.
Right. All right. Well, if you have any additional questions about that, you can go there. You can also contact Claire Farley at Claire Joy Farley on Twitter. All right. So at this point, that was all the news that I had brought to the show. Did anyone have any additional things that they'd seen this month that had sort of slipped through the cracks? Did I manage to get it all?
There was an article you did send us, and actually this kind of also relates back to healthcare and stuff like that. The Hobby Lobby decision.
Oh yeah, yep. We're gonna get into that super in depth when we come back. Oh.
Well, then we'll take a break and we'll come back.
All right. So that's a perfect time to take a break. All right. So we're gonna be back in about 2 minutes, and so we're gonna take a small break. And when we come back, we're gonna talk about the Hobby Lobby decision. We're going to go really in depth about how this is impacting you when it comes to housing, school, employment, all of these different things. And we're going to go really in depth and have a great conversation. So we will see you in about 2 minutes. Bye, guys. All right, we're going to be starting back in a moment. All right. Starting this back up. All right, hopefully Kortney's going to get back with us in a moment. Looks like we're having some connection issues with him for a second. But in the meantime, welcome back to the Trans View, and we're very excited today. We have a super amazing conversation that has been really on my mind this month. So it's something that I've had a lot of feelings about. I know a lot of other people have had a lot of feelings about, and that is specifically the Hobby Lobby ruling and some of the impacts that that's going to be having on the transgender community, whether that is employment, housing, all these different things, your ability to go to school, things like that. So we're going to get really in depth. But for anyone who's not aware, and we'll just sort of dive in with this, the Hobby Lobby ruling recently, what it did is it gave for-profit corporations that are closely held, so like, I don't know, like whatever legally that means, but there are a bunch of them, the right to deny women access to healthcare, any sort of contraceptive healthcare, on the basis of religious objection. So in essence, when you boil it down, what it did is it gave for-profit, closely held for-profit corporations the right to have a religion and deny people health benefits based on that religion. And immediately, and almost immediately after this ruling, several organizations filed suit to say, hey, if these organizations get a chance to say that they don't want to provide contraceptive health care to women because they religiously object to it, well, we want to fire gay people because we don't support gay people and our religion says that. Immediately. And so there are already cases working their way through the legal system trying to get closely held corporations the legal right to fire people because they are gay. And so this right away, I knew that this was going to have a huge impact on American society in general. And Claire, I'd love to get your thoughts sort of on, like, do you remember when this ruling came down recently? Did you have any like thoughts or initial reactions when it came down? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, I think that a lot of folks in the advocacy community were really watching this, and, especially folks focusing on policy within the trans community were kind of worried. And, I think when the ruling came out, we immediately saw the impact that this might have on the trans community, specifically with the end of bill in place, similarly using the Hobby Lobby language and ruling to, impact this kind of far-reaching, religious exemptions within that bill as well. Mm-hmm. And so we started to see a lot of the larger LGBT and trans advocacy groups kind of turning away from the end of bill. Oh. And I think that, if this Hobby Lobby ruling hadn't come through, we might have not seen that these religious exemptions could be so far-reaching. And so I think it's really challenging that this has come up. And I think the bathroom issue in Illinois is another great example.
Yeah, so this already came out of, this is the one in Hobby Lobby that you're talking about with the bathroom issue, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, we can talk about that one as well. But, there's already a lawsuit filed by a transgender woman against Hobby Lobby because basically Hobby Lobby has refused to let her use the women's restrooms, and again they're using their religious freedoms. So this is our, you're trampling on our religious freedoms by wanting to use the appropriate restroom. And Aneesh, I see you rolling your eyes. So clearly you have some thoughts on this.
Pee in peace. I mean, first of all, I think it's a little ridiculous to say that the religious freedoms are being violated, but that's my personal opinion. But to say that my religious freedom is more important than your ability to go to the bathroom comfortably is ridiculous. Like, honestly, I mean, when this decision came down, I was so angry for so many reasons. Just the effect it's going to have on everybody, whether you're trans, gay, straight, you know, anybody at this point can now say, I'm not going to provide you with this service or allow you in my house or this whatever because I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
And if that's not the biggest form of discrimination, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that is striking to me is back when, you know, just like 50 years ago when desegregation was happening in the South and across the whole country, there were so many people who were saying that if you're going to force us to, you know, serve black people at our restaurant, that's violating our religious freedom. There were cases that made it very far through the legal system making that claim. And in the end, they were denied. They said, no, you can't do that. And then here, all of a sudden, they're like, oh, now you can do it because it's women or it's LGBT people. It's very troubling. So we have a couple of statistics and about inequalities that come out against the transgender community. So the first thing here is that 26% of transgender people have been fired because of their gender identity. And this comes from the National Center for Transgender Equality. 97% of transgender people have been harassed on the job because of their gender identity. And of course, when you think about what that means, a quarter of transgender people have been fired because of it, or almost 100% have been harassed because of it. This is going to have far-reaching consequences. One of the consequences is that 19% of transgender people have been homeless due to their gender identity. And additionally, so this is an issue that affects transgender people, but it also very specifically affects transgender people of color. So when you look at things like how these issues are intersecting, people who are living below the poverty line, 15% of all transgender people, regardless of race, are living below the poverty line. And that's massive. That is a huge amount, and it's staggering how disproportionate that is to other communities. But when you look at Latino or Latina transgender people, it's 28% are living below the poverty line, and then black transgender people, it's 35%. Over a third are living below the poverty line. And so these things come directly as a result of discrimination, whether it's based on race or your gender identity. And so it's very clear that employment discrimination exists and is out there. And Claire, you've had a lot of experience working with employment issues and getting people employed. What are some of the impacts that you've seen discrimination in the workplace have on transgender people?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that the information you gave is great, you know, but I think one missing piece there is that 70% of trans folks are unemployed, and so that's a huge portion of our workforce. And so, you know, the work that I do is really looking at, you know, where is this blockage or this barrier in getting people into jobs, and then also with employers, where is this kind of ignorance or this lack of understanding of state and city policy kind of not allowing folks to get into the workforce. And one piece that I really think is important to look at in this ruling is that, you know, so many trans people don't have access to basic health care, housing, and if we don't have access to housing and basic needs, how do we then get people connected to employment? And so a lot of the work that I'm doing now is to really advocate for the Bay Area's first trans housing program. And so I really think that that will help, you know, really stabilize the community so that they can start thinking about, like, what are my goals? What kind of jobs do I want to have? You know, could I, you know, go out for a point scholarship? You know, could I go back to school? And so we've been so busy fighting for just basic human rights that we haven't really had an opportunity to go after what we want to do.
Yeah, well, that's such a great point. It impacts so many things, and you and I were having a conversation about this earlier before the show started, about this sort of cyclical, vicious cycle that this has. So if you experience, say, you're fired from a job because you come out as transgender, that has a significant impact on you economically. So now you may not be able to afford your apartment. You may be forced out onto the street. You may end up being homeless. And this is not a news story. This is something that happens to transgender people all the time across the country and across the world. But if you don't have housing, how are you going to get a job? Like it just increases the barriers, and they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, we're at this point where now discrimination is almost being codified as a way of saying you can now discriminate if you find some religious objection to it. And in the past, so many religions, it's very common, have objected to LGBT people, whether it's gay marriage or transgender rights. Aneesh, I'd love to get your thoughts on this sentence here. So this is part of the survey. And basically what they say is, because transgender people are fired and not hired because of their gender identity, they are at significant risk of economic instability. Homelessness, poverty, violence, and working in street economies are a consequence of the workplace discrimination. These issues can only be addressed by working to eliminate the root cause. Allowing people to have and keep jobs to support themselves and their family is vital. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. My biggest thing is, if I'm trans, how does it affect you? I should be able to go to work and do my job the way everybody else goes and does their job, and then at the 1st and 15th of the month be able to come home and take a paycheck and be able to support my family or whatever it is. I think it's so ridiculous that something that simple is, facing such adversity. That people can't go to work comfortably and do their jobs and make money because somebody else thinks that they don't deserve to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, also, like with religious freedom.
Infuriating, isn't it?
I get so mad.
Me too.
I'm trying to have like let's have a constructive conversation and not just like yell at the screen for the next 20 minutes. But it gets me so mad because it's something that has affected me very personally throughout my life, especially growing up in the middle of Utah in an area where 90% of the people living there were Mormon. I experienced a lot of discrimination when I came out as transgender. And when you look at the teachings of the Bible and all these things, so we want to break it down, like what are they actually objecting to? What is the basis for their objection? There's basically nothing in the Bible that says anything about transgender people. There's like one verse in the Old Testament way back that's like, don't do something or other, but it's like that one little teeny verse that they've read, and they've sort of missed the whole of the Bible. Like, the Bible's like, it's thick. It's a big thing. There's lots of stuff in there. And I'm sure that if you did like a word blog or like a whatever it is, where it shows like how many, the circle's bigger based on how many times the word is used.
Right.
I'm sure that love your neighbor is much bigger than gays are going to hell or transgender people are evil. So I think people are missing the point here. Go ahead.
No, and also to add on to that, it doesn't matter what your Bible says. Your Bible can say what you believe, and you should take those values and your beliefs and keep them in your home, and that's great. But when you try to implement that into law, into a country where we are a separation of church and state, people like to sit here and argue that we're a Christian nation, and we're not. We are a secular state, and there is no room for religion in our policy. And the people who want to argue that we are a Christian nation and that laws need to be based on the Bible, they can take a ship into the middle of the ocean and start their own colony. Because that's, talk about being American. That's not what being American is about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's all about you know, we should have the right to be who we are,
Right.
and not have our have that challenged by religious or religionist policy. One of the impacts that is already coming out of something like this. So this is pretty recent. There's a student at George Fox University, and this is a conservative Christian college, I believe in Georgia. And there's a transgender man there who, you know, all the documentation says is a man, but the university has said you can't be housed with the men. So he wants to be housed with his friends. And they say you can't do that because we have a policy on the books that says you can't have co-ed housing unless you're married. So basically what they've done is they've separated this person out. They say, well, you can't be with the women because you're a man, but you can't be with the men because you're a woman. And then, you know, so they're all doing this. They're doing this basically on the back of saying, you know, this is our religious belief, and because they're a religious institution, they have the right to do that. And unfortunately, the Department of Education granted the school a religious exemption to do this in May. This is very dangerous. Again, this is discrimination against transgender people being codified into our education policies. And when you look at, you know, Claire, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but when you look at how, you know, these sorts of things add up, access to education clearly has a big impact on somebody's ability to find employment. So, you know, what sort of impact do you think these sorts of policies codified by the Department of Education are going to have on transgender people?
Yeah, you know, I think that there's been so many great examples of more private universities, you know, taking ownership of making sure that trans people have safe spaces. You know, I went to Sarah Lawrence, and you know, it's a historically women's school, and you know, I was fortunate to be part of, you know, the process to really create change there. And so many people are on the forefront of that movement, but I think that this has happened enough that the Department of Education ruling in that way, I think, is really a step backwards. And so I think that needs to definitely be appealed. But in terms of the broader issue, you know, even if we look at like systems of incarceration, you know, trans women of color are 49% incarcerated in this country. And, you know, if we think of lack of access to education, high incarceration rates, homelessness, you know, all those factors really make it difficult to be self-sufficient. And, you know, my main piece with it is, you know, how do we start advocating for ourselves in those moments? So, you know, for instance, you know, what are our rights with ban the box, you know, now that employers can't ask us, you know, our criminal history? You know, what name do I put on my resume? How do I come out to past references? And so I think the more that we can kind of be empowered as a community to kind of address those issues and get access to, you know, scholarships or education that is supportive, I think that's going to really help us move forward. One other great example is, you know, Macy's, you know, a couple years ago had an employee who, based on their religious values, tried to ban, you know, a shopper from using the women's dressing room. And Macy's fired that person because, you know, their policy was to be open to all people and to allow trans people to use the dressing room of their choice. And so I think we need to start calling employers up to that value, that even if policy doesn't support it on a federal level, that we need to ask our companies that we're shopping with, that we're giving our hard-earned money to every day, to say, if I'm going to shop with you, then these things need to be in place.
Yeah, great point. So we're starting to run low on time, so I'm gonna jump into the last piece about this employment part, and then Aneesh's got to go.
See you guys later. It was nice having you, Claire.
Bye. Nice talking to you.
All right, she's got to run. All right, thanks, Aneesh.
Sure.
All right, bye. All right, so Claire and I, we can finish this up. So Obama, and I talked about this in the last show, but Obama finally signed an executive order barring discrimination against people who are transgender or lesbian, gay, or bisexual. And he did this because Congress has had an inability to pass ENDA, which is the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, that's been working its way through the legislative process for like so long. So in his signing of this, Obama said that 18 states and more than 200 local governments already ban employment discrimination based on sexual orientation, as well as a majority of Fortune 500 companies. So that's great. There are some protections out there, but it's very localized. But he notes that more states allow same-sex marriage than prohibit gay discrimination in hiring. So you can get married, have your big gay wedding in more states than are, and more states are allowed to fire you as a result of being gay. So basically, this change is only applied to federal contracting, which will impact some 24,000 companies, which is huge. That's a big amount, with a total of 28 million workers. Unfortunately, this is only 1/5 of the United States workforce. So Obama has been able to act, but the impact, while it is significant, is limited. And so, Claire, I'd love to know sort of what your thoughts are around this executive action. Do you think it's the right move? And do you think it's going to have a significant impact on employment opportunities for transgender individuals?
Yeah, I think this is the right move, but I think more needs to be done. I think that an executive order for federal protections across the board for sexual orientation and gender identity is needed. I mean, I think doing it piecemeal is one direction, but we need to have protections across the board, regardless of religious exemptions. So, I think that it's the right direction, but we've all been working and fighting for this for so many years, and our elders have been working towards this, that I think it's really time that, we see a bigger step forward. And like you said, it's a really small percentage of the jobs that are out there, and trans folks work in tons of different fields and careers. A lot of them are not federal contractor jobs, so we need to focus on where the community is wanting to work, and those organizations specifically, and make sure that they have great transition policies in place, that they understand their local measures, and that their corporate practice is that they're not going to discriminate.
Yeah. Great point. So to sort of wrap this up, I think we've managed to go pretty in depth on this. Obviously, like, we could have probably talked about this for another 2 hours and not run out of things to say. But we would love to hear what you, the audience, think. So if you have any issues of not issues, but if you have any comments or things like that, if you have any personal experiences that you'd like to share with us about being discriminated against, whether in the workplace or housing, or anything like that, please let us know. Share your experiences, because it's so important that we talk about these and that we make our voices heard. As a final note, we have a couple people who have responded to some of the questions that we posed at the beginning of the show. So our award for the person coming to us from the farthest distance goes to Anita Wilson, who is watching us from Glasgow, Scotland. So hello to Scotland. Quick trip across the pond, but it must be like the middle of the night there or something. So glad to have you with us. There was one other one. Let's see. Out of the Bottle is coming to us from Portland, Oregon, so very close. I'm gonna actually be there next week, so maybe we'll catch up. But they say that they've had a wonderful 35-plus year career working in beauty outdoors here in the Pacific Northwest. So it's always great to hear success stories of people who have had successful careers and been able to manage that with their own transition. So thank you all for sharing your experiences and for being a part of our audience here. Claire, do you have any final thoughts before we end the show?
Yeah, well, I want to just say too that if people are looking for support or want more training to get back to work, they can always come and work with us. They just need to go to teisf.org, and that's teeisf.org. And we also have a great trans computer programming series. So anyone that wants to get into tech, it's a great industry. It's a booming industry. So come learn how to code, learn how to program. And so I think that, there's a lot of folks doing things that they love. And so let's figure out like what folks' passions are and help them get there.
It's fantastic. And you and I work together a lot on a lot of your employment stuff. So I highly recommend working with Clair and with DEI and with the SF Center. So if you get the chance, please visit the website. Definitely check out the Transcode workshops because those are incredible. Unfortunately, we've already gone like 6 minutes over. We clearly have a lot to talk about. Clair, I want to thank you for being on the show today, for sticking around for the entire time. So it's just me and you. The last two have remained. But I think on that note, we'll go ahead and we'll end the show. But thanks everyone for participating. Our next show is going to be on. I always miss this. This is what happens when Morgan's not around to help me do the show. Our next show is going to be on Saturday, September 6th. Same time, same place, and we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Bye.